Hey everybody, welcome back. As many of you have noticed that follow my stuff, I love to get out into nature and take walks whenever I can, proverbially touch the grass and just kind of reconnect and get some fresh air and exercise. And I highly recommend that if you have the chance. My place is surrounded by a lot of parkland, so I have the opportunity to enjoy that pretty much whenever whenever I'm not kind of stuck in my office. So uh, I wanted to dive right into the topic for today. It's a follow up on one of my other very popular videos called Marriage is a Scam. And first of all, I want to lead in with my definition for those of us that are new to the channel. Thank you to all the new subscribers, by the way. Your feedback has been really incredible. Um, I want to start with a definition of what exactly I mean by marriage is a scam by defining marriage as to what I'm talking about. The marriage I am referring to is the union between a man and a woman where the government is now involved. We're talking about legal marriage in the Western countries. And when I refer to that as being a scam, I'm talking about the way our society, our culture, and just our legal system has handled that and what all that has done to especially the people that are the paying parties when it comes to in particular things like spousal support. uh, so that's really what I'm referring to. I am not referring to specifically the religious institution or anything involving God, really the erosion of trust and connection between men and women that has happened in Western society due to our culture and the way everything's going on. That's what I'm actually referring to. So I realize that the title of some of these videos tends to cause an emotional knee-jerk reaction with people. They'll end up responding to the title, and I've even seen multiple points where people have commented and said, hey, I didn't watch the video, but I'm making comments and arguing with people in the comments section as to what I think is going on here, how right or wrong I think this is, rather than addressing what was actually said in the video, which is really kind of a shame, but it is what it is. Some people like to have knee-jerk emotional reactions and not really think something through logically and reasonably that you should watch the content you're going to comment on. Nevertheless, we're going to talk about divorce, why it happens, why men are actually avoiding it, which it fits into the divorce issue, because I've already given my story of it. I've started to talk about other stories that people have gone through, and the accounts of attorneys and other people that are involved in the legal system that have warned me and others saying, here's the pitfalls out here, and here's what's happening. You need to really watch your back and take care of yourself. And the reason why they're doing this is they're seeing incredibly manipulative, twisted, and fraudulent behavior get rewarded by the court system because of issues that are happening with the way our laws handle divorce. So really, more than anything, I'd be an advocate for system-wide change. I believe that a good marriage between a man and a woman is just an incredible thing. And I wish that we all had the opportunity to have that. But unfortunately, I think our system just encourages and incentivizes damaging marriages and relationships and causing the split up and the breakup of families so that big daddy government can come in and incentivize and do certain things and give money to one of the parties. And please don't get me wrong, I realize that there are instances where much wrong has been done on both sides, but currently, no matter what you say, the legal system is lopsided. It just is. Not just my personal experience, and it is certainly not isolated. I can give you a lot of evidence and accounts from other people, including people that all they do is work in the system, and they're telling me the same thing, and others that have encountered this. One of the major reasons why, and we'll start with this, why I think a lot of young men and even guys that are older are avoiding the government version of marriage, bringing the government and getting it in and getting it involved, is they take a look at the statistics and the reality of what's going on out there. The insanely high divorce rate, the insanely high statistics of people getting stuck in financial situations afterwards where it is so utterly devastating. They don't, understandably, would not want to be a part of that. And I can completely understand that. I can completely understand why they would avoid that. Now, all of that really, if you're somebody who is religious or a Christian, it really kind of comes down to, do you believe the government being involved in marriage is something that is a God-ordained thing, or is that something that they just did of their own accord? My personal belief is They had no right to inject themselves into people's personal relationships or marriages, that no matter what state of marriage or how you view marriage or how you want to define the boundaries to a certain reasonable extent, the government should not be involved at all. I think that that is a racket in and of itself. So a lot of the reason why a lot of young men, I think, are avoiding it, and a lot of people just, I think, are out of touch with the reality of what's happening today. I've discovered that especially older generations, the boomers, they don't quite realize what's going on. They're like, marriage is a great thing, or it was great back in our time, and it was great here, or I had this, or somebody will show up and they'll give an example with an exception, which is awesome. I'm glad you found an exception, but generally speaking, most of the time, the incentivization of breaking up the marriage is really fed through things like social media, the things we expose ourselves to, the things we're watching that tell us, basically cheating, adultery, lying to your partner, being dishonest in your relationship are all things that you should be doing to look out for yourself. Funny, odd thing about that is those same people end up whining about how the other person figures out what they're doing and they jump ship and leave them and end up with somebody else and end up happy because they figure out what you're doing and they realize you're not actually on board with them. You've got one foot somewhere else the whole time. And a lot of, I think, young men are starting to kind of come to terms with this. They're realizing that there is a incentivized deception and fraud going on. They realize that the statistics are against them, that they're likely to end up divorced. They realize that it's very likely that the female partner, 70 to 80% of the time, and don't shoot the messenger, it's just the statistics, is going to be the one initiating. And with such high rates, I mean, if you're just going to look at it, let's be sane about this for a minute. Most people are not going to take that risk. They're going to avoid it like crazy because why would they want to dive into that? Why would they? And so, I mean, I've become much more of a proponent of versions of marriage that don't directly involve the government, so that if you decide you want to do something with you want to step out or you want to get involved with somebody else, you don't get to wreck everybody else's life to do it, especially the person you were in a relationship with. You have to cover that cost yourself. Now, I do want to kind of go on to the second part of the video now. I'm sure there's a ton more we could say about the first part, but, that's just explaining to people why divorce is kind of, a hot button, because so many people don't want to get divorced. But I want to go on to the second part and kind of explain what happens with divorce in regards to maybe more like people's belief systems. And in particularly, one of the predominant ones here in the West is Christianity. I personally am a Christian. And although I understand a lot of the particulars about it, I wanted to address these issues. The first one being, and I'm just going to name them off. It's actually 3 ones that I want to name off that I think are actually genuine good reasons, even in a Christian household, for a divorce. First one being the obvious one, adultery. The other person stepping out on you. They're clearly trying to connect or build something somewhere else with someone else. They're involving themselves with physical intimacy and romance outside the home. And my personal take on that is a non-negotiable thing. You cannot do that and then attempt to lecture or demand anybody else that you have an expectation of them to stay. That is insanity, complete and utter insanity. And oftentimes I've encountered people, and this is across all 3 subjects I'm going to cover here, but I've encountered people with religious backgrounds that will say, well, marriage is a holy thing in the sight of God, and you can't just break up a marriage. But they end up usually preaching that really to people that are the victims of the adultery rather than the people that are actually committing the adultery. They're telling the person that had it done to them, you need to stay so that it looks like the numbers are staying up higher and it looks like marriages aren't breaking up. And that's akin to like a military commander ordering his troops to do something that they would never voluntarily want to go live in. Nobody wants to live in a situation where the person you are with is committing adultery on you, has done that, is violating all of that. There's no peace in that household. There never really will be. There never really will be. Now, maybe there are some people that have found ways past that. To me, that is a non-negotiable, and you cannot expect. I don't even think, according to the New Testament anyway, even Jesus Christ himself was was able to understand that being a point of contention that you really can't get past. Second of all, another one would be, and when I say this, I'm going to define it a little bit. When I say abuse, I'm talking about you're in physical danger. Now, I say that very carefully because abuse is so loosely thrown around these days, where I've heard accounts of women online, and I'm only using this as an example, but of women online claiming, well, he wouldn't let me go out to clubs with my friends and bump and grind and twerk all over other men and get drunk with them, so he's abusive because he's attempting to control me. That is just plain old insanity. You want to act and live like a single person, then go out there and be a single person. That's just the truth. If I go out and do that, I don't expect somebody that I'm dating or married to say, well, that's absolutely fine. You go ahead and act like there's nothing between the two of us. Then they should in turn be acting like there's nothing between the two of us. There's no real boundary and there's no real respect and love if you're going out and doing that sort of thing. But that is not the abuse I'm referring to. I'm talking about threats. The other person is doing things that are going to escalate to a form of violence, which is pounding the table, punching holes in the wall, damaging property around them. And one of the main issues about that is that person not only needs to seek anger management and needs to be confronted, or maybe even at some point have the cops called on them for something like that. You really need to address the fact that that sort of thing almost inevitably leads to, and this has come from statistics of not just police reports, but psychologists that deal with this sort of thing, that almost inevitably leads to them going from punching the table to punching the person that they are angry at. Because if you don't learn how to control your anger, eventually you're going to take it out on the person you're angry at, because you're hitting the table because you're angry at them. You're punching a hole in the wall because you're angry at them. Eventually you're going to punch them. And addressing that before it gets to that point. Now, but the reality is, inevitably those situations do escalate, and most of the time they don't de-escalate. It's very hard to de-escalate it because you're dealing with an individual that doesn't want to often face what they're doing or face the fact that they're out of control. So in a situation like that where they have threatened you verbally that they're going to do physical violence to you, or they've actually committed physical violence to you, towards you in any way, grabbed you, restrained you, tried to hold you against your will, threatened you with a weapon, you understand what I'm saying. That is something that I absolutely believe, and anybody that's reasonable would believe that. Now, as I've said before, there are people out there that kind of take this religious stance of, you can't just break up a marriage, and they'll even fight against what I'm saying right here. And I've encountered a few, believe it or not, that just their common sense is just gone. I'm like, you can't tell me that it's a good, holy, godly marriage and that the other person is assaulting his wife, and is out of control. And on the flip side of that too, don't, as a woman, go assaulting a man and then get shocked if they end up retaliating or they end up pulling away from you because you're counting on you being able to assault them and them feeling like there's an obligation that they don't do anything back to defend themselves. Whether or not you think they're going to hurt you or not, if you escalate violence, be prepared to receive violence in return. It doesn't matter where you are. If you were to do that to somebody on the street, they're going to repay violence with violence. Acting shocked that that's what you get paid back is when you engage in violence, you get violence paid back to you. Once again, insanity. And I think one of the last points I would want to touch on would be criminal activity. Embezzlement, fraud, engaging in things where you're engaging in violent crimes outside the home. Doing things where, maybe your husband is a white-collar worker that's embezzling money from the company or the firm or whoever he works for. At some point, all of that legally and on every other level is going to come back to your house. And expecting somebody to stay under those extreme circumstances, and it might seem like, well, these are all pretty extreme circumstances, but a lot of people go through them. I've met not just women that have been through things like finding out that their spouse was embezzling money from work, but men discovering that their wives were involved in all sorts of schemes and other things, and realizing, I'm going to lose my house. I'm going to lose everything because I'm married to this person. They shouldn't be doing any of this to me. And I think, having said those 3 points, and I think I've explained them pretty well, and of course, in the comments, please fill in with your stories. I'd love to hear some other stuff that's gone on. Other people find a lot of They get a lot of understanding and real truth from that when they see what other people have been through, and you explain and be reasonable about what is acceptable and what's not when it comes to the marriage and divorce equation. So, having said all of that, I guess my final point would be, I've noticed in the comments, in the same places that I've noticed in a lot of situations where I've dealt with other people, where there are people that will judge those situations and say, you just don't understand marriage, or you'd have just done something wrong. And those people have never been through a situation where they're dealing with somebody who is not interested in adjusting their personal behavior when it comes to fidelity between two people. They're not interested in adjusting their personal behavior when it comes to anger issues, and they're not interested in adjusting their behavior when they don't realize that their greed is going to overtake their household, that they're going to end up in trouble, and they're going to take everybody with them. And they also don't realize that the people that they should be preaching that at are the ones that are doing it. Don't tell the person that was the victim of adultery, you should stay, you should work on things. Preach at the person that's doing it. Don't tell the person that's the victim of physical violence, you should be doing this or that. Preach at the person that's doing it. Now, the person who's dealing with physical violence or adultery or any of these other things, I absolutely support, especially with the danger that those things can put you into. And, physical infidelity definitely does put you in danger, because now you've got another person who is been physically intimate, most likely, romantically linked to the person that you're with. You have no idea the mental stability of that individual. You have no idea the mental stability. I mean, look at the situation they've involved themselves in. They might come after you. They might decide, just based upon some small thing that your spouse says to them during some time where they meet up together, that they think you're a bad person. They're going to come after you. You have no idea it's even happening. So I've read about accounts like that where somebody didn't even realize that their life was on the line because the wife embellished some story, or the husband embellished some story, and they decide, I'm going to go take a gun into this situation. So just to be, plain and simple, understand that when people leave, there are oftentimes, even when it comes to religious reasoning, good reasons to get out of certain situations. And we need to be reasonable and honest about it. And we also need to be reasonable and honest about why that divorce is the main reason why people are avoiding marriage these days. It's not so much the commitment. It's not that they don't want to have something that's devoted and loving between two people. It's because they are tired of the scam. And the scam is what our system and our legal system and our society has done to it. So anyway, that's pretty much all for today. I know I've said it many times before. Make sure to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I'm going to keep bringing you guys more content. I'm going to try and stay as truthful and straightforward as I can. I'm going to sometimes get things wrong, I'm sure, just like anybody, but we all have different opinions about things, and I think it's important to form a community and talk about these things. Nobody's ever completely right on anything. So I love the fact that I feel like we're kind of building a community and a camaraderie, and I want to encourage all of you to stay safe out there and watch your backs when it comes to these situations, and come back and join me again. I really appreciate having you around. I'll talk to you all again soon. Have a good day.